Okay, so there's a certain friend of mine who is practically expecting me to open this video with this exact joke, so here we go. For people who struggle with European geography, the cities of Budapest and Bucharest are easy to mix up because they kinda sound similar in English. So how do you remember which one belongs to which country? Well, it's a pest when you're Hungary. Sajnálom. Hello everyone, I am Tessellating Hexagons, and I think we can all agree that we're better off pretending that that opening joke just plain old didn't happen. So with that being said, let's get stuck in with the centre of attention in this video, the fine nation of Hungary. Now, you might have spotted a pattern with these in-depth analysis videos that I do. Usually, I only ever seem to look at countries that have been struggling or that have just flat out given up on the contest altogether. But Hungary doesn't seem to fit either of those descriptions at all, and yet I'm dedicating a video to it. Do I have something controversial to say about the Hungarian approach to Eurovision after all? Just keep on watching and you'll find out. Before we get too far down the rabbit hole of clickbait speak though, let's open with some fast facts. Originally, their national broadcaster was one Magyar Televízió, or confusingly MTV for short. However, in July of 2015, it underwent a merger with 3 other media outlets in the country, all under the supervision of the Hungarian Media Service Support and Asset Management Fund, abbreviated to MTVA in its native Hungarian, from Médiaszolgáltatás-támogató és vagyonkezelő alap. Which is quite the mouthful indeed, take it from me. This fusion of outlets gave rise to what is now known as Duna Médiaszolgáltató, or the Duna Media Service, which currently serves as Hungary's official broadcasting service in the eyes of the EBU. In spite of the merger, mostly because that was just a bureaucratic thing anyway, the present head of delegation is still one Sylvia Pushbook, who held the position prior to the change as well, and as we'll see later in this video, this might well be because there's no sense in fixing what isn't broken. Thinly veiled praise aside though, the country's first Eurovision effort came in the benighted year of 1993, in the form of Andrea Sulak's Arva Regel, or Lonely Morning, or Lonely in the Morning, or Orphaned Morning, or Orphan in the Morning. The internet isn't really consistent on the meaning, I'm fairly sure it's Lonely Morning, but as we're so used to hearing about on this channel by now, this song fell short of actually making it to the contest, placing 6th out of 7 in our old favourite show, Kwalifikacja za Mill Street. And so, once again, the EBU doesn't acknowledge that as a proper participation on their official records. Instead, their officially recognised debut would have to wait until the following year, when Friderica Bayer brought Kinek Mondiam Elvet Kemet, or To Whom Can I Tell My Sins, to Dublin in 1994. Strictly speaking, this would go on to be the country's highest placed entry too, finishing an admirable 4th in a field of 25. While we're on the subject though, other noteworthy placings include 20 years later when András Kallai-Saunders finished 5th out of 26 in Copenhagen with Running, which placed 3rd in its semi-final by the way, and Jotzi Papai's entry Origo, which brought Hungary its present-day highest ever score of 200 points into 8th place out of 26 off the back of finishing 2nd in its semi-final in the 2017 contest. Now, in honest truth, I find Hungary's presence at the contest to be truly fascinating. They're one of those countries with a genuine air of mystique around them. They're not quite a forbidden fruit country as I call them, but they're like the next tier down from that, largely because when I was just starting to get into the contest in the mid to late 2000s, their attendance was all kinds of spotty and irregular, and if the Czech Republic is anything to judge by, that is a surefire way to get my attention. Since I live in the UK though, Hungary tends to almost never enter public consciousness at all, not for anything newsworthy, not in sports, not that I follow sports, but still, or even as a tourist destination, though I've heard that Budapest is a culturally fascinating city, so if you're into that sort of thing, maybe consider Hungary as a holiday destination, I guess? But anyway, even though Hungary has been present in every Eurovision Grand Final since 2011, even though they've placed in the top 10 3 times in that time, it feels like they've been keeping a lowish profile. Yes, the country that brought us Vislatnya is keeping a low profile. I know what I'm saying here. What I mean to say is, Hungary has absolutely carved out a niche for themselves as a mainstay of the grand final running order, and yet they never seem to be celebrated as such. When it comes to announcing qualifiers, there's always that unspoken expectation that the likes of Sweden, Russia, Ukraine, and, as of lately, Bulgaria are bound to qualify like some kind of foregone conclusion, but there never seems to be that much hyper-anticipation around Hungary, despite their current streak of 8 consecutive qualifications, backing up an overall qualification rate of just over 83%, or, okay, 71.5% if we count 1993 and 96. So, is Hungary doing something wrong in the hype department then? Is this lack of attention their own fault? Honestly, I couldn't tell you. But in a way, it's a good thing. Hungary brings to the contest a sense of humility that you just don't get with the other juggernaut countries. So let's take a closer look at their history and their strategy and see what the rest of us can learn from the Hungarian method. Like all good, compelling stories, we should start at the very beginning, in 1993. In the time before that year's Eurovision season, Yugoslavia had begun to dissolve to the point that in the 1992 contest, the Yugoslavian delegation really only represented Serbia and Montenegro in a de facto sort of way. That meant that the ex-Yugoslav countries all wanted their own independent stake at Eurovision glory, and this influx of interest was further bolstered by several other countries, including the freshly divorced Slovakia, alongside Estonia, Romania, and the hero of our story, Hungary. Unfortunately, the EBU didn't have a system in place to allow for so many countries to compete at once. If everyone who wanted to debut that year had been allowed to take part alongside everyone else who'd signed up, there would have been 29 songs competing in the show, a record still unmatched to this day, though the 2007 semi-final came close, and the 1996 pre-qualifying round was 29 countries long, but I mean, that doesn't count. Ask the EBU, they'll tell you the same thing. So, the 7 countries responsible for this new interest were put to the test in the form of kwalifikacja za Millstreet, in which 7 were cut down to 3, and coincidentally, the 3 that passed that selection show were the 3 ex-Yugoslav countries, which left Estonia, Slovakia, Romania, and Hungary out in the cold, so they'd all have to wait 1 more year before being able to burst onto the Eurovision scene. Considering that Hungary's official debut in 1994 led to their present-day best-ever placing, though, I think that their second-last placing in 1993's preliminary round was a blessing in disguise. That being said though, at least as far as the 90s were concerned, Hungary might well have been right to fear that they had peaked too soon, because what followed was a solid string of inconsistent luck at best. For instance, in 1995, their score plummeted down to 3 points, landing them another second-to-last finish in 22nd out of 23. The year after that, they finished on the qualification borderline of 23rd out of 29 in the pre-qualifying round, tying with Finland on 26 points, but then losing that tie and, with it, the right to participate in the final. 1997 saw them do a fair bit better, coming 12th out of 25, but then the following year they slipped back down to 23rd again, also out of 25. From there, that put Hungary in the danger zone for 1999, causing them to be relegated from the contest due to being amongst the lowest scorers based on 5-year averages, which is how they worked out who was in and who was out back then. It was a simpler time, and by simpler I mean much more unnecessarily complicated and unfair. Still, is there a pattern in there that could at least explain the nosedive in results? Well, their entries were selected internally in 1993, 95 and 98, whilst national finals were held in 1994, 96 and 97. Broadly speaking, that means their best results came from national finals and their worst came from internal selections, but that doesn't help matters all that much. True, 2 of their national final selections achieved their 2 highest placings of the 90s, 4th and 12th respectively, but then their national final in 1996 yielded them a failure to even pass the pre-qualifying round, so what? Then again, their internal selection did bring them consistently bad results in comparison, a 3rd from last and 2 second from lasts, one of which being in kwalifikacja za Millstreet, so... So, where does that leave us then? In not so many words, despite their roaring success in their first proper Eurovision outing, Hungary does, in fact, come from some very humble beginnings indeed. So much so that their poor results saw them booted from the contest, and, much like some other countries affected by that rule, that relegation in 1999 turned into a hiatus lasting several years. But unlike some other countries, Hungary spent this time gathering their strength and preparing a new outlook for the contest of the 21st century. Here in the present day, we know that ended up working wonders for them, but that strategy didn't always look like it was going to pay off. It's at this point that Hungary's presence at the contest becomes spectacularly erratic, and honestly, as I said before, that's why they caught my attention in the first place. Bear in mind that up until their relegation in 1999, Hungary had never failed to field an entry to the contest. The only times they weren't represented was when their song didn't pass a pre-selection round. But whether the official records recognise it or not, there was a Hungarian entry that year. It just didn't get to compete. Their relegation from the contest changed that. 1999 was the first year Hungary didn't try anything Eurovision related, specifically because they weren't allowed to, and this turned into a slump of inactivity, mostly blamed on financial difficulties, which ended up lasting all the way up until 2005. Perhaps inspired by the semi-final format introduced in 2004, in which non-qualifying entries still counted as official participants in the contest's history, Hungary did finally end their 6 years of silence with the dance group Nox and the song Forog Vilag, meaning Spin World. Having learned from the admittedly shaky statistics their tenure at the contest in the 90s had given them, this song was chosen by a national final, and accordingly it saw its way not only into the final, receiving a 12 points from Poland along the way, but to a commendable 12th place finish overall, which, under the voting system at the time, was laudable for a song performing first in the final's running order. Nevertheless, Hungary still wound up withdrawing from the 2006 edition, again citing financial woes. Still, that didn't mean the nation had run out of inspiration. They came back in 2007, selecting an entry in a way comparable to Italy's selection process even now. That is to say, MTV made arrangements for the winner of the 2007 Newcomer of the Year award at the Phonogram Hungarian Music Awards to go on to represent them at the contest. This took the form of Magdolna Rózsa, whose entry, Unsubstantial Blues, stormed through the semi-final in second place and landed squarely in 9th at the close of the voting in the final. And with that, Hungary was back in business. Or so we thought. Hungary seemed to have found their rhythm, both financially and musically, because they stuck with the contest in 2008, using a custom-built national final that celebrated the Hungarian language, but that left the door open for its winner to perform in English at the contest if they so chose. And the eventual winner, one Erzsébet Cseh, did indeed choose to do that. But then disaster struck at the contest in Belgrade. In spite of the Hungarian delegation following their usual recipe for success to the very last letter, their entry didn't just fall flat, it flopped entirely, finishing dead last in a field of 19, one of the joint largest semi-finals in post-two semi-final Eurovision history. And for the first time since the pre-qualifying round of 1996, Hungary missed a final despite conscious effort to the contrary. 2009 wouldn't be any kinder to them either. This time they went internal to save on costs, but this ended up backfiring not once but twice in the same year. Their first choice was one Mark Zentai, and a song entitled If You Wanna Party, but it quickly emerged that, despite their enthusiasm, the song had, in fact, already been released under a different title. But worse than that, the original dated as far back as 5 years previous, and worse than that, the original version had already been used as the theme music for the Swedish production of Big Brother. Oof. So, the jury was forced to regroup and pick a different entry from their pool of submissions. One day after their original announcement, they updated their statement to reveal that they had settled on Katya Kompos, with Magányos Csonak, meaning lonely boat. This drew criticisms from the Alliance of Hungarian Popular Music Composers and Songwriters, who exist apparently, claiming that the juries hadn't spent long enough deliberating because they had 24 hours between their first announcement and this announcement, so clearly that wasn't enough. But MTV defended their selection to the bitter end, and that was that. Until 1 week later when Ms. Kompos announced her withdrawal from the project anyway, just to focus on her theatre career instead. I mean, to be fair, she was starring in 8 plays at the time across 3 different theatres, but bad timing, yo. And so, at last, the jury came back with their third eventual choice, Zoltán Adok with Dance With Me. And after all that hassle and bad faith, the song ended up coming a paltry 15th out of 19 in its semi-final, not even qualifying anyway. That might have been down to the upset in the selection process, but considering that I hadn't even heard about this until I wrote this script, it was probably more to do with the quality of the song itself, a camp, by-the-books disco pop number engineered to have some level of homoerotic appeal, judging by its staging and its vaguely lustful lyrics. One way or the other though, Zoli missed the final, and Hungary withdrew from the contest once again the following year. Nevertheless, Duna TV broadcast the 2010 contest anyway, hoping to appeal to the EBU in preparation for their upcoming attempt at becoming a fully fledged member themselves, so they could take over Hungary's participation in times of financial hardship. This was ultimately dismissed by the EBU, but it didn't really matter in the short term or the long term, because MTV would end up merging with Duna in 2015 anyway, and before then, MTV returned to the contest in 2011 anyway, and there's not much to add there. In 2011, they internally selected Kati Wolf, who quickly became a fan favourite to storm the contest, and while she didn't live up to that hype as far as results were concerned, she did still qualify in 7th place, bringing Hungary back into the final, albeit to the tune of a 22nd place finish out of 25 overall at the close of the voting. But with Duna eager to help out and with fan hype supporting them, this was the start of a new era for the Hungarian delegation. While it may be the only anomaly in the pattern, so to speak, Kati Wolf would go on to be the first of Hungary's as yet unbroken streak of qualifying entries, making the 2010s categorically Hungary's most successful chapter in Eurovision history to date, and it was because of this newfound support and enthusiasm. More accurately though, every entry from 2012 onwards, consistently hitting the top 10 in their respective semi-finals by the way, has come from a very unique national final format by the name of a dal, meaning the song. Indeed, despite a rather shaky start, Hungary have held on tight to the knowledge that their public always steers them right when it comes to selecting a song, 2008 notwithstanding. At any rate, national final entries always had better success rates than internal selections, and a dal embraced that. More than that though, it's gone on to become one of the paragons of the Eurovision calendar, and for good reason. The exact number of participants took a while to nail down year on year, but the magic number at the moment seems to be around 30. Each one of those 30-odd participants is given a unique 2-digit code that persists throughout the series, so if you want to vote for Act X, you always use the same 2-digit code rather than using their running order number, as is standard in most selection shows. Over the course of several qualifying heats and semi-finals, again the exact number varies with the year, acts advance based not on raw televoting scores, but on being rated out of 10. A panel of 4 experts each give each performance a rating out of 10. The public are also encouraged to text in their score out of 10 for each performance during the show, hence the importance of the unique 2-digit code for each act. All the ratings from the public are then averaged out, and then that average score acts as a 5th juror. Then, the highest scoring acts based on those ratings advance to the next round, and of the non-qualifiers, one more also advances just based on raw public votes alone. For the final round, 4 jurors award 4, 6, 8 and 10 points to their top 4 favourite acts, and the public has no say in this process. Then, the 4 highest scorers based on the jury's votes are offered to the public in a kind of super final, who must then just plain old televote for their favourite. No more ratings and rankings involved, just straight televoting. And then, the most voted for candidate wins. It's as simple as that. Or is it? Does it sound complicated? Well, in a way, it is, but elegantly so. I've gone to such great lengths to explain the format to you because it's one of Hungary's greatest assets when it comes to Eurovision. Every year, it's earned them a place in the final ever since its introduction in 2012, and deservedly so. It's a powerful format, but more than that, it's a unique format, completely original and owned by Hungary. And beyond that as well, each year of a dal uses the previous year's winner of a dal as its theme music. That's an overwhelming amount of wholesome national pride there. Admittedly, the songs that a dal has fielded to Eurovision tend to be hit or miss in terms of final results, but for a country that has to face the semi-finals every year, a national final that provides guaranteed qualifiers is the power move every competing nation wishes it had. And as I said, it's wholesome and full of self-love. It's not arrogant, it doesn't wave its successes in everyone else's face, it never assumes that it will definitely yield a qualifying result, even though it always does. Basically, in short, it's Hungary's own homegrown wonder child with all the success of the likes of Melodifestivalen, but with none of the annoying, overinflated ego. And so that brings us to the portion of the video where I assign Hungary a rank. Frankly, despite their shakiness in the 90s and their slight unsteadiness at the end of the 2000s, I think Hungary has more than earned a wholehearted Tessellating-approved rank A. Hungary is a model student in the school of Eurovision. Other countries should aspire to think like Hungary does. In fact, get that printed on a t-shirt, Be Hungary! Or, okay, maybe that slogan could use some work. But in all seriousness, the more I think about it, the more I find myself in awe of how much raw power Hungary brings to Eurovision right under our noses, and nobody seems to be freaking out about it. What is it with countries with red, white and green in their flags and raging Eurovision success? Hi there, Belarus. Sorry, not you. Not yet, anyway. But Hungary though, every year, thanks to Adal, they field distinct, original entries, ranging from drum and bass with a powerful message to emotional Romany folk pop, even going as far as daring to bring metal to the contest in 2018. Hungary never goes out looking for glory, but glory seems to find Hungary every year, and it never goes to their head. There's some serious life goals right there. Literally every other country on the roster can learn from them. Seriously. And on that note, I think I should sign off. So, thank you for watching, and thank you even more to the lovely people who powered this video over on patreon.com/tesshex. I know it's probably annoying how I advertise this at the end of every video, but if it weren't for that lovely bunch, then these videos literally would not exist at all. And you can join them in keeping this series going for just $1 per video. And of course, the more you put in, the more perks you get out, including exclusive access to the patrons-only Discord channel on my server, and, well, this bit at the end applies to you directly, and there's bonus videos, there's outtake reels, there's so much fun stuff going on, but it's entirely up to you to decide. Check it out if you will, I would appreciate it, but it's not required. For the time being though, I have been, and will continue to be, Tessellating Hexagons, and remember, be hungry!